Good evening. I'm Alicia Menendez, and we begin tonight with the continued fallout from President Trump's Liberation Day global trade war. For a second day, financial markets were in free fall. Today, the Dow Jones dropped just over 2,200 points, making it the worst day for the market since the start of the pandemic. It takes the title away from yesterday's market performance, which saw more than $3 trillion, yes, with a T, dollars in losses. Couldn't help that this morning China responded to Trump's new trade attacks by announcing it will impose a 34% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. goods. Economists at J.P. Morgan now raising the odds of a recession to 60%. That is a significant jump from just before the tariff rollout. And we heard today from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, who acknowledged that the damage from the trade war will be worse than expected.
While uncertainty remains elevated, it is now becoming clear that tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. The size and duration of these effects remains uncertain. While tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation, it's also possible that the effects could be more persistent.
And while all of this is playing out on a global scale, raising concern and confusion of what is to come, Trump spent the day relaxing at his golf resort in Florida. He's about to speak at a $1 million a-person candlelight dinner at Mar-a-Lago for a super PAC that supports him. Joining me now, Senator Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont. Senator, what are you hearing from folks in your state about what this is going to mean for them?
This is hammering them badly. I mean, the inflation that Jerome Powell talked about is real. We're going to pay higher electricity prices, higher home heating fuel prices, higher gasoline prices. It's hitting our farmers hard. They import their grain from Canada. Our manufacturers are going to be paying higher prices. And then with the retaliatory tariffs, we're going to have some manufacturers paying tariffs going out, or they'll be charged, and then paying tariffs when the finished product comes back. And what's happening in Vermont is happening, of course, all around the country. It's really bad.
It is really bad, made worse by the fact that you have a White House and a president who don't even seem to be on the same page about their messaging. Take a listen.
The president made it clear yesterday this is not a negotiation. This is a national emergency.
Let me make this very clear. This is not a negotiation. This is not that. This is a national emergency.
Are you open to deals with these countries if they're calling you?
Well, it depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good. The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have.
How are other countries, how are businesses in this country supposed to decide what to do when they aren't even told the rules of the game?
Well, they obviously can't. They just are paralyzed. And, you know, what Trump can do, and he's been doing it here, is strong-arm businesses or law firms and subject them to his will. What he's finding out with these tariffs is that other countries won't be bullied. And, in fact, the domestic politics in any country, Canada or European Union, requires those folks to stand up for the people they represent against the Trump bully that is perceived who he is in those countries. So he's gone a bridge too far. And by the way, I'm seeing cracks in this. You know, a lot of his Republican supporters here in Congress put their faith in Trump. It'll work out. Well, they're seeing that it's catastrophic. Those things that are happening to folks in Vermont are happening to folks in South Carolina or North Carolina. And there is legislation now to restrict that tariff authority. And we have several co-sponsors, and it's led by Chuck Grassley. So I think there's cracks in the armor here. People are seeing what is really happening and not listening to essentially the braggadocio of a president who doesn't have a clue as to what an economic rationale is for this reckless policy.
Let's talk about that Grassley-Cantwell legislation, right? If you get enough votes in the Senate, do you believe there's any shot of it passing through the House, or is it DOA in the House? And if it is DOA in the House, what recourse then does the upper chamber have left?
With the current House, I think it is DOA, but that doesn't mean that it isn't really important, because if we get Senate Republicans to stand up for common sense, and say what we all see, and that is this tariff policy of the president is reckless and harmful. That is going to be something that voters in these districts start to see. And when they start talking to their representatives and demand that we stop the pain, stop the punishment of these tariffs that lead to higher prices, that may be something that ultimately affects Trump. But he's a very willful person. That's what's so dangerous about him. He doesn't have any credible economic backing on how this makes sense. But he's kind of a bully, and he's pushing it, and all to the harm of everyday Americans.
Kind of a bully is perhaps the kindest way one could put that. Vermont Senator Peter Welch. Senator, thank you so much for starting us off. Let's bring in our colleague Stephanie Ruhle, NBC News senior business analyst and host of the 11th Hour. All right, Stephanie, no one explains this stuff better than you. Talk to me first about how China is retaliating.
Okay, no surprise. You know, the idea was everyone else was going to fold. China is retaliating because this is a trade war. And in a trade war, no one wins. And there's something specifically I want to point out about the impact, because we just keep saying this is going to cost individuals so much more money. Think about what this is doing for business, big and small. Over and over, we keep hearing the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, say, we're going to be manufacturing here. The robots are going to do it. What company have you heard in the last 48 hours say we've just brought in a whole bunch of robots and they're going to make the sneakers now? What CEO has said we're going to build a factory? And let's be clear, if one were going to build a factory, it would be a multi-billion-dollar commitment. It would take 3 to 5 years to do that. So what's going to happen over the next 5 years? Because if you walk into a shopping mall tomorrow, Alicia, take a look at any of those stores. Do they sell clothes? Do they sell sportswear? Do they sell sneakers? If they do, we don't manufacture those things in the United States. That doesn't exist. I remember Adidas tried to do manufacturing here for 15 years, huge investments. It didn't really work. If you and I wanted to take a walk in the garment district right now in New York City, it'd be a short walk. We don't have one anymore. So when you take a look at so many of these stocks that are crumbling, these are real businesses and real people who have no means to get those clothes now to the United States without paying huge tariffs. And if they do, you and I are going to be paying 25 or 50% more when we're buying our sons sneakers and clothes in the weeks to come. So when we hear from this administration, like a Howard Lutnick, who's saying, oh, the robots are going to do it, what robots? The only CEOs I know about are the ones I've been talking to for the last 72 hours, from big companies, small companies, Wall Street investors. And you know what they're doing? Calling this White House and saying, please stop doing this. It is economic suicide for our consumers, for our voters, and for our businesses.